not actually fearless, but I am taking action in spite of fear. So I am telling myself I'm fearless, even though I'm shaken inside. It doesn't stop me from taking the action.
Welcome back to Happiness in Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award-winning journalist, a mom, wife, and you know what I like to say, just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. You can find more podcasts at mailtribune.com. And if you like listening, make sure to subscribe. And if you happen to be listening in the Apple Podcasts app, if you'll just scroll all the way down and leave 5 stars, I would really, really appreciate it. All right, let's get to today's topic. We are talking about leadership and what it takes to be a leader, whether that's you're a small business owner and you're leading a company, or you're a parent leading a family, or you have leadership roles within your community. My guest today is Kathleen Ries-Jubenville. She is a certified high-performance coach who educates her clients on proven successful business strategies. She helps them implement the systems they need to create a thriving business that supports the lifestyle of their dreams. You'll hear about what it took for Kathleen to become a business coach. She built her own accounting consulting firm while she was raising 2 small children. She then scaled it and sold it. She grew another company's revenue more than 300% while expanding it to 15 locations in 2 states. Today, we talk about the high-performance leadership skills that help us to succeed, but not just succeed, thrive as well in our careers, our relationships, and really our well-being. We're going to talk about how you can be a leader to yourself first, how to work on your mindset, and the impact choosing being a leader every day can make in your life. Let's get to it. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Oh, thanks, Danielle. I'm so excited to be here.
Let's start with your story, because you were working a really high-paced life and suddenly one day you find yourself Googling how to get off the treadmill of life, which I love because I think that's the same thing I Googled. Like, if you listen to my early podcast, I'm talking about the treadmill of life, like nonstop. So tell me a little bit about that breaking point or the transition point in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a 30-year career in accounting. I graduated from high school in Ohio, moved to California, and I put myself through college, 12 years, working full-time, college part-time. And then I just never ended the grind. I just kept going, corporate America, had my first baby, kept working during that, the 50-hour work weeks on average. And it was a great life. I'm not complaining, but it was hard. And then when I was pregnant with my son, 7 years later, after I had my daughter, I just thought, I really have it in me to have my own business, to stay at home with my kids and have that flexibility. So I quit my job and started a home-based bookkeeping service. This was before all the major Internet of Things, cloud-based accounting and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I started that and grew that for 12 years and sold it. And then thought, okay, what's next? All I knew was accounting. Got back into a corporate job for a few years. And that's when I finally okay, accounting's been good to me, but I need to get off this treadmill. And I had never spoken those words before in my life. They just came to me one night, and it connected me with a high performance coach certified by Brennan Burchard in North Carolina. And I started being coached. And that was the transition for me. And okay, maybe there's something else in my life.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the before and after Kathleen.
Well, before, first of all, I was a brunette. I had really short, dark hair, very accountant-y, no offense to accountants out there, but that was my identity, very conservative and structured. And as you can see now, it's a little looser and longer. And, I would never have been comfortable with this. This hairstyle is a reflection of the inner change, not a beauty choice necessarily, but more of the reflection of who I am on the outside now. Comfortable with the more relaxed me, the more authentic me, the more speaking my truth and putting light into the world and doing more than just numbers. Not that that's all that was before, but I just definitely have a more creative opportunity now.
I love that. So you went on to write Grow a Pair of Antlers. Is that Tell me about what that means and if that's what you had to do.
Yeah. So when I started working with the coach, I did not know what was next for me. I actually didn't even think at the time I was going to switch out of accounting. I'm an avid reader. I always have been. And so the coach and I started exploring the possibility of me writing a book. And he encouraged me just to put my heart out there, my stories, to include stories in every chapter and just to say what I wanted to say. So there wasn't any agenda to it. Which, if I wrote a book now, I'm a business coach now, so I might have an agenda of I better have some frameworks for business, whatever, and that's okay. But at the time, there wasn't an agenda other than to just be a light in the world. And my faith is very important to me, and I wanted to include that. But mostly, I just care about the values of leadership, integrity, courage, things of that nature. And so I just included stories from my own life where I've developed in those areas or had success in those areas. And so it's grow a pair of antlers, the fearless climb to lead your herd. And so to my fearless does and fearless bucks out there, that's why I wrote it.
How did you become a leader through this?
I don't know that I became a leader through this. I think leadership is not, it starts with yourself. It starts about leading yourself. And when you are leading yourself, other people are naturally attracted to you, and it gives you the opportunity to influence others and have leadership roles. So even when I first moved out here when I was 18, and I first had a telemarketing job, but then I applied for a job as an accounts payable clerk. I had never touched accounting or a 10 key, or I had no, and the controller liked my giggle. So she gave me a chance. I said, I can learn this. I can do it. And I led myself to believe that, and I led her to believe that about me. So that was the very beginning of, exerting like, this is what I'm going to do in my life. I'm going to start a career. I'm going to support myself. I'm going to put myself through college. This job is important to me. I mean, there's a certain amount of luck to things. She didn't have to give me that chance, but still, that I've done that throughout my whole life. I've made career choices where I've left. I worked my way up in a company, but I saw that I hit a ceiling, and maybe it was a smaller company, and so I saw that there was another company I wanted to work for that was larger. And so I quit that job and started all the way back at the bottom as a file clerk and worked my way back up to management. So it's being very strategic and being a leader in your own life. And so I think every step of the way, that's what I've done.
One of the things you write in the book, you have some affirmations, and I loved this one. Let me see if I can find it quickly. The affirmation was, my past does not define who I am or what I can accomplish today. I receive grace from my past. I love that one because I think people get connected to their past. And I think someone listening who is thinking, I want to be a leader, but maybe they just heard what you said and they're like, well, I have not led myself through life. Like, I've let life happen to me and here I am now, but I want to change the trajectory of my life. What would you say to them?
The turning point for me on that, how I learned that lesson was through a book by Hannah Herderd called Hind's Feet on High Places. And it's based on a Bible verse in Habakkuk about how the book itself is about taking someone who saw their flaws, saw their disfigurement, and it's an allegory, and how God leads her up this mountain, and this transformation that occurs, and how at the end she sees how God truly sees her in her beautiful, original, just, perfect individual that he created. And so it didn't matter all the things that happened in her past. It didn't matter all the mistakes that she made. And quite frankly, many of us are carrying the grief about the mistakes that other people have imposed upon us, right? Because they're human. Not whether they're, this isn't we're all human. So we all screw up each other, right? We all screw each other up. That's the way it happens. We all hurt each other. And so there's so much pain from other people hurting us, from us hurting other people, that regret, the guilt, the mistakes. So at some point, we got to reconnect with and give ourselves grace for, give others grace for what's happened in the past, and say, okay, those things happened, but what can we do today? And that's where it starts. What can we do today? Some courageous step in that right direction. And then it builds and it becomes a cycle of success.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think each step is the evidence to yourself that you can do it.
Exactly. But it's baby steps.
Mm-hmm. Is this a stumbling block for clients when you talk with clients?
It's a stumbling block for everybody in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly when you own a business, that's why I'm a certified high performance coach myself now too, because owning a business is so much about mindset. Mm-hmm. And it's the mindset about what we're capable of doing, whether it's closing the sale. I hear so many people say, oh, I just don't want to be a hard seller. I don't want to be well, okay, you don't have to be a hard seller, but if you don't convert clients, if you don't convert leads, you're not going to survive. The mindset shift there is you ask the question, do you have something of value? Do you have something that can help them? If the answer is yes, then gosh, tell them how it's going to help them. Mm-hmm. Lead them to the place where they are going to get results and more happiness, more health, whatever it is you're selling. But it certainly is that mindset piece of if we don't have that grace, that leadership within ourselves, that belief in ourselves, if we haven't made that shift, then your business is going to suffer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For me, when I first started the podcast, I was like, okay, I make this a business. It's going to be great. But then I came across this block of, how can I charge people? Why is this okay for me to try to help people have better lives, but take their money? That just doesn't make sense to me. Until I realized that is the way that I can not only provide for my family, but make a contribution to the places I want to contribute. If I want my money going to fight childhood cancer, that's where it's going to go, and my nonprofits, etc. You can't take a bite out of those really hard things in this world unless you start making the sale, which is hard.
It is hard. And so it's two steps. It's the mindset around it, and then it's the systems. They're simple systems to implement in businesses that are successful systems that other people have used, that if you implement those systems, the selling itself is a conversation and it's easy. So you shift that mindset from it's a hard sale to it's a conversation, and I can have a conversation and I'm doing good for people and I want to do good for people.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that these same values and abilities translate over to being a leader in your community or being a leader within your family?
Oh, definitely. And it starts with, like I mentioned, leading yourself, but then always thinking of yourself as a role model. So, your kids are always watching the people that you're interacting with, whether it's your networking group or your nonprofit, your church, your community, whatever community you're a part of, they're watching you, and you have the opportunity to show them that whatever it is that they're needing in that moment, you're showing them some way to behave, some way to think, some way to act. I used to be really nervous about getting up on stage and speaking in front of people. And the way I shifted that for me is before I go out on stage, I'll take a deep breath and I'll just ask God for me to touch one person's heart, just one person. And I know that I might not never know who that person was, but I just believe that that's going to happen. And then I'm thinking about them. I'm not thinking anymore about, did I stumble over a word or did my lipstick smear or whatever. That's a silly example, but you know what I'm talking about. It's not about me anymore. I still have nerves, but I'm channeling it into giving.
Yeah, that's huge. I think the ego controls so much of our lives. And when we're stuck in our, oh my gosh, everyone's thinking about my outfit, everyone's thinking how I look, everyone's thinking about the lipstick on my teeth, which has happened to me. I think when we are stuck in that, that's what makes it hard. But when we understand we're there to serve, it totally changes everything, because you don't care about how you look and those kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly. I did the same thing before coming on your podcast today. Who's
I
going to
love
hear
that.
this? Somebody
Yeah.
hopefully can hear this and make a difference in their life.
Mm-hmm. So the mindset change for a mom listening, or a mindset change for someone in their church or someone in the PTO, what would you say that is?
One of the other things that I've seen a lot is, and maybe there's no coincidence that I was 50 when this shift started happening for me. You get to a
Mhm.
point in your life where, okay, you've done so many things. And, I was thinking, God willing, I've got 30, 40, 50 more years of my life. And what do I want that to look like? And so I would encourage your listeners to think about what the rest of their life would be like, what they want, what kind of legacy they want to leave. What do they want people to learn from you, from your wisdom, your years of, your experiences, your stories. We all have had different journeys, and there's so much to be gained from telling our stories. And so, if you're in that situation where you're midlife and mom in the church and the community, whatever that is, and you're feeling anxiety, I think of anxiety as a desire to make a difference and you're not including action. So you're not
Mm.
taking action. You have energy that's not coming out in action. It's being bottled up. And so what I see so much is people with anxiety, and there's different levels, and I'm not talking about, you need therapy and all that kind of stuff to help you through that. I've done therapy, I've had coaches, so I've not done this journey alone. Um, so I encourage you to get help, but also think about what it is that you want to do next. And it can be while you're still full-time working. I did that transition while I was working. I transitioned to start my business coaching program now that I have over the past few years. So it doesn't have to be a hard stop in everything else in your life, but you need to think about what your future is going to be and start those baby steps towards it. That would be my encouragement, is start thinking first about what you want, and second, start taking baby steps towards it. Take some action.
Mm-hmm. You talk about how fear can turn into anxiety and then turn into a whole bunch of other emotions like judgment. Talk me through that.
So fear is the opposite of courage. And so fear is going to completely stop you from doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so that fear is usurping your courage, usurping your leadership, usurping your opportunity for success, for a legacy. It's stopping you from taking that action. So that's why fear and anxiety are so closely tied together, because they're both about not taking action.
Hmm. And I love that the picture behind you that just says fearless, because it's so beautiful. And when you feel fearless, that picture, like, it holds the whole feeling of what it feels to be fearless. Just like
Yeah.
up there looking into the sun on your hind legs,
I love that.
right?
Yes. Well, and the thing is I've never, and that it's kind of ironic that that's the name of it, because I'm not actually fearless, but I am taking action in spite of fear. So
Mm.
I am telling myself I'm fearless, even though I'm shaking inside.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't stop me from taking the action. In the book, I talk about the cycle of success and how when we're presented with a decision, there's two ways we can handle it. One is we can just passively let whatever happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is to actually take action and make the decision. Sometimes our decision is to not take an action, but the act of making the decision is an action.
Mm-hmm.
So when we are decisive about our life, when we're intentional, then we're taking action. That starts that cycle of success. When we passively let opportunities go by, or desires within us, if we ignore those callings within us, then that's when we're going to feel that we're going to cave into that fear and feel that anxiety, and kind of usurp our success.
Mm-hmm. I like that, because when you're not being your authentic self, you're not going to feel good.
Yeah.
One of the things, it might be right around where you're talking about in the book, you wrote, quote, "Your thoughts create your emotions and your emotions, end quote. I love this because I've seen lots of thoughts create emotions, but that they also create our emotions. So how do we gain control over this so we can have control over our emotions?
Yes. So, but it is in that order. So we need to be very careful about what we put into our minds, what we allow to enter into our minds. And this has been a season where there has been a lot of negative stuff. And I've struggled too. We all, I think collectively have struggled with everything that's gone on in the world. And the more time we spend absorbing that, the more we're feeding the negative emotions, the reactiveness to every little word we read or every whatever we think is the truth or not the truth. We all are reacting to these things constantly. And so it's really important. That's why I include affirmations in the book. That's why I read the Bible. That's why I am constantly reading other books like High Performance Habits behind me and all sorts of other books that are about positivity, personal growth, philosophy, travel, fun books too, and books that are other people's stories and journeys. I just fill my mind with those, with hope, really is the word. I fill my mind with hope and options. And once I've done that, when you start having hope, that's when you can start taking action.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
You
love
don't
that.
have any hope, you're not gonna be in motion.
I've seen the evidence of the people who can see the hope and they can see the opportunity. And I've also seen the evidence of people who can't see the hope and who are almost a little paralyzed. And to be really honest is I've gone through that. It's been a wave for me. Sometimes I'm feeling paralyzed and sometimes I'm feeling action oriented in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is important to acknowledge the feelings that we're having about things and take care of ourselves through that. There's been days where I've just said, I'm going to spend this morning in bed. I just
Mm-hmm.
am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it is. But I'm not suggesting that we should. And I think this comes across this way a lot of times. Oh, just be positive, just be optimistic. And that means that you're ignoring your feelings. And I'm not suggesting that anybody should ignore their feelings. I think we should acknowledge our feelings, care for them, and then find a way to move forward as fast as possible. So
Mm-hmm.
not ignore them, not stuff them down, not pretend, but acknowledge and move on. And I've noticed that too with a lot of business owners is they have either said, oh, COVID, or before that it was whatever, the economy. There's always a reason or an excuse. And certainly some reasons are, there's certainly been valid reasons, but that doesn't mean that you can't be creative and find a way out of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way to shift. All the restaurants that have shifted to pickup or delivery or whatever, there's so many ways to shift things and we have to do that constantly in our lives, our businesses, our lives. Things are always changing. COVID threw us for a loop, but really there's constantly things throwing us for a loop, family illnesses or whatever. So adaptation, resilience, those are critical in this day and age.
How do you think as a leader someone can develop that kind of resilience? Because I can see even as a mom, once you have things figured out, your kids transition and now that doesn't work for them anymore, or every single phase of all different things you may be pursuing, things are going to change and you do need to have a little bit of that resilience.
It is it's a habit. It's something that you have to develop. It's not something you're born with. Resilience, kids bounce back. They fall down when they're learning to walk and they bounce back up. That's one form of resilience, but the kind of resilience that we need as adults is completely different. There's, I noticed, I feel like people naturally physically mature, but what we don't naturally do is emotionally mature. And we get to a point where like high school is over or college is over, and this was where it ended. Somewhere, some people you notice are like stopped when they were 12. That's where their
Mm-hmm.
emotional maturity is, whatever that is. And there's reasons for that, trauma or whatever. But sometimes it's just about, gosh, you didn't even realize that there were opportunities for personal development and training. You've never worked with a therapist before. or a coach, a high performance coach, a wellness coach, a business coach. You didn't take an online course. You didn't realize, online courses are really becoming bigger now. Listening to podcasts, inspiring podcasts like yours. I mean, these are the things that I think people are starting to realize are available more and more. And there's so much free information available to people that these are the things that develop us emotionally. Reading is certainly one, but if you didn't grow up loving to read, you might not be a reader as an adult. So there's audiobooks, and if you couple that with motion, like again, motion, walking, jogging, whatever it is for you. I'm a walker. I'm not, I'm not so much into running. I've done it, but it's not my thing. But, if you combine that with motion, then you're really taking care of your whole self. And it doesn't have to be a lot. Just, again, those baby steps, just motion, just some kind of motion forward.
Mm-hmm.
That's what develops that resilience. Then you're already moving. You think about when you first pushing a rock, it hardly wants to budge. But if the rock is already kind of rolling, it's easier just to kind of push it along. And so that's what you want. You already want to be in motion so that when there's a bump, it's easier to get over.
I love that analogy. I love how you talked about failure in the book, because we're going to come up against things where we're not doing it how we want to. We're going to come up against things where we're not being a leader how we want to, where we're not leading the people around us how we want to. Talk me through that. Failure is an event, not who you are. You are not the failure.
Exactly. Oh, well said. Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. One is starting with grace. And second might be an apology, grace for yourself or grace for someone else that made a mistake. We're all just human. When I'm managing teams and something goes wrong, hey, okay, guys, we're human. This messed up. Then the next step is let's talk about what we do next. Do we need to solve this? Do we just need to learn from it? What's next? So the two steps, kind of a grace and an acknowledgement. We're only human. If there needs to be an apology in that, include that. And then the next step is, what do we do next? Again, motion. Let's move from it. If we're constantly blaming each other, again, it stops the motion. There's nothing moving forward. You can't learn from it. You can't build on it. And those are the important things.
Mm-hmm. And I think a leader takes responsibility. That's one of all the best leaders that I can think of are people who step up and take responsibility, whether it's ugly or not.
Yeah. And that responsibility might not be for the failure itself.
Mm-hmm.
It might just be for leading the people out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, a story in the Bible, Moses goes up to get the 10 Commandments and the people below were kind of lose sight of God and their faith. And he comes down the mountain and he's angry at them. But then, he needs to lead them from that spot. They need to move from that spot. So it may not be Moses's fault that they drifted away from where they were all agreed they were going to be. But then it was his responsibility as a leader to move them forward. So that responsibility, that's where the leader's responsibility lies.
What is leadership to you?
It's about having intentional purpose, courageous actions, and those two things lead to influential leadership. And those are really the three big topics of my book. Mm-hmm. So if you're intentional and courageous, then that gives you the opportunity to lead. You're leading your life first, and it gives you an opportunity to lead others.
Mm-hmm. And you have a worksheet at the very end that someone, if they wanted, they could work through that. So I'll link the books as well. I'll also link High Performance Habits since we've been talking so much about it. The last question I want to ask is one I ask everyone. This podcast is about finding more joy in the everyday. So I want to ask, what is your number one tip to doing that? Finding more joy in the good, the bad, and the in-between.
So I actually meditate every morning, and it doesn't have to be for a long time, 10 to 20 minutes. I miss mornings here and there. And when I do, I feel it. I do that for a couple reasons. Joy, it settles my mind and helps me not think about because my mind is always going. So it gives me a respite for my mind to refresh and regroup. But it also gives, through the meditation, I do some breathing. I have physical pain and intestinal issues. I'm just going to say it here. And so that breathing helps relax the muscles that are stressed in me and also starts my day right. So if I don't do that meditation, I have less joy because I am tense and in pain.
100%. I absolutely agree. I also think all the things we're talking about, finding the intentionality in our day, I think starting with a meditation will do that. I think being courageous, stopping all the anxiety and the thoughts in your mind through a meditation will do exactly that.
And then the second thing that I do that's tied to that is I read my Bible. And I do kind of a unusual thing. I don't think it's atypical, but I think it's kind of rare. Is I'll actually just I don't do like read the chapters in a row or whatever. I actually will ask God to kind of lead me to a passage that would be helpful for the day. And I'll just kind of like open it up and flip to a page and then just kind of scan and find what talks to my heart in that moment. And so I get from that, I am releasing some control over the outcome in that moment to God, which helps me relax because all I have control over is what I'm doing in the present. And so by connecting with God on a daily basis, it helps me release that control over the future. And also, I feel like I'm getting wise guidance for where I should spend my time today, my focus, or maybe sometimes, believe it or not, I get a strategy for my business or, who I'm going to connect with today, that kind of thing. So that's kind of my 1-2 punch.
I love that. I don't talk a lot about religion on here unless it's through a guest, but I do the same thing, not daily, more on like I need some help kind of strategy. But I love the idea of the daily reading.
Yeah. Well, God's always there for us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kathleen, for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Danielle. It's been my pleasure. I've truly enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed hearing from Kathleen. I am going to link her books as well as her website so you can connect with her. I want to thank you so much for being here on Happiness and Progress.